Judge Marcus Thompson stood before the ornate mirror in his chambers, his reflection showing a man who carried authority in every line of his carefully pressed suit. The rich mahogany walls around him had witnessed countless decisions that had shaped lives, including his own. As he adjusted his Italian silk tie, a Father's Day gift from his daughter Sarah, his mind wandered to the reservation at Le Bernardin. Patricia had been planning this anniversary dinner for months. The leather of his briefcase creaked as he slipped the day's final briefs inside. 20 years of legal work had taught him the value of thoroughness, and he never left documents for tomorrow that could be reviewed today. His Harvard law diploma caught the late afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, a reminder of the path that had led him here. His phone buzzed again. Running late. Traffic. Patricia's text read, followed by a heart emoji that made him smile. She knew his habits too well, the extra hours he put in, his dedication to every case that crossed his bench. That dedication had earned him respect throughout the legal community, but it had also cost him countless family dinners. The courthouse halls echoed with his footsteps as he made his way toward the exit. Most of the staff had already left, leaving behind the peculiar silence that settled over the building after hours. Jerry, the night security guard, offered his usual friendly nod. "Good evening, Your Honor. Big plans tonight." 20 years of marriage, Jerry. Worth celebrating, wouldn't you say? Thompson smiled, his voice warm with anticipation. "Congratulations, sir. Mrs. Thompson must be a saint," Jerry chuckled, buzzing him through the security door. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. His BMW, a symbol of his hard-won success, gleamed in the dying light. Thompson breathed in the crisp evening air, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. From his early days as a small-town lawyer to his current position on the federal bench, he'd faced and overcome countless challenges. His phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Sarah. "Don't forget Mom's favorite flowers. She's been talking about this dinner all week." He smiled, making a mental note to stop at the florist. The peachy roses Patricia loved were always worth the extra stop. As Thompson reached for his car door, the quiet evening air was suddenly pierced by the sharp flash of blue and red lights. His hand froze on the handle, 20 years of professional achievements suddenly feeling very far away. Officer James Barrett's patrol car glided past the courthouse for the third time that evening. The jewelry store robbery from his afternoon shift kept replaying in his mind. Shattered glass, terrified customers, and a description that had led nowhere. 6 months into his transfer to this precinct, he was still trying to prove himself to the senior officers. The radio crackled with routine updates, but Barrett's attention drifted to the courthouse parking lot. His training instructor's words echoed in his memory. "Trust your instincts, but verify your assumptions." The darkening sky cast strange shadows across the nearly empty lot, transforming ordinary scenes into potential scenarios. Movement caught his eye. A figure in dark clothing near a luxury vehicle. Barrett's pulse quickened as his training kicked in. The dispatcher's earlier alert about suspicious activity in the area surfaced in his thoughts. He hadn't called in his location yet. This could be his chance to show initiative. Barrett's hand moved to the light controls, muscle memory taking over. The patrol car's blue and red lights burst to life, painting the surrounding buildings in alternating colors. He watched the figure freeze, one hand on the car door. In that split second, Barrett made his decision. Pulling his cruiser at an angle behind the BMW, Barrett followed procedure to the letter. Positioned the vehicle for cover. Check surroundings for additional subjects. Radio dispatch with location and situation. His voice was steady as he called it in. Unit 247, conducting investigative stop at Courthouse parking lot, single subject. Through his open window, Barrett caught fragments of classical music from the courthouse's evening sound system, an oddly genteel backdrop for what could be a tense situation. He adjusted his body camera and checked his tactical flashlight, everything by the book. The figure remained still, and Barrett noted the expensive cut of the clothing, the deliberate posture. Something felt different about this stop, but he pushed the thought aside. Too many officers got hurt giving in to doubt. His surgeon's voice played in his head. Courtesy, professionalism, respect, but never at the expense of safety. Barrett stepped out of his cruiser, hand resting near his holster, close enough for quick access but not so close as to appear aggressive. The flashing lights cast strange shadows across the scene, making it difficult to read the subject's expression. He took a deep breath and projected his voice across the parking lot with practiced authority. "Good evening, sir. Please step away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them." Judge Thompson turned with measured grace, his years on the bench having taught him the value of deliberate movement. The bright lights painted harsh shadows across the parking lot, but his voice remained steady, carrying the same measured tone he used in his courtroom. "Officer, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Thompson said, keeping his hands visible at chest level. His briefcase hung heavy with the day's cases, the leather strap crossing his crisp white shirt. 20 years of legal experience had taught him the delicate dance of such moments. Barrett stepped forward, tactical flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness. "Sir, I need to see some identification." His voice carried the clipped tones of authority, but something in the judge's composed demeanor made him adjust his approach slightly. The man's posture spoke of confidence, not defiance. Thompson nodded slowly. "My identification is in my breast pocket. I'm going to reach for it now." He narrated his movements with the precision of someone long accustomed to careful communication. "I'm Judge Marcus Thompson. I've just finished my evening session in Courtroom 4B. The name sparked recognition in Barrett's mind, but training kept his flashlight steady. Around them, the courthouse's evening lighting system hummed to life, casting a soft glow that contrasted with the harsh police lights. A late working clerk peered through his second-floor window, then quickly stepped back. "My judicial credentials are with my bar card," Thompson continued, his fingers moving deliberately toward his pocket. The gold band on his left hand caught the light, the 20th anniversary still waiting to be celebrated. He could feel the weight of the moment, familiar yet never routine. Barrett watched as the judge's hand moved with careful precision. The parking lot had grown quieter, as if the very air was holding its breath. Even the distant traffic seemed muted. His training screamed at him to maintain control of the situation, but something about the judge's calm demeanor commanded its own kind of authority. The leather wallet emerged slowly, and Thompson held it out with the steady hand that had wielded gavels for over a decade. "Officer Barrett," he said, reading the nameplate in the flashlight's beam, "I appreciate your diligence. However, I think once you verify my credentials, we can both agree this evening deserves a different ending." Barrett's flashlight illuminated the credentials in Thompson's steady hands. The beam caught the gold judicial seal, and suddenly last week's courtroom scene rushed back to him. The same commanding presence he'd witnessed on the bench now stood before him in the parking lot, the roles dramatically reversed. "Your Honor," Barrett's voice shifted, the recognition hitting him like a physical force. He remembered standing in Courtroom 4B, describing his investigation of a complex fraud case. Judge Thompson had praised his thorough preparation, even citing his testimony in the final ruling. The flashlight beam wavered, then lowered. Around them, the harsh glare of the police lights continued their rhythmic dance across the courthouse walls. Barrett's mind raced through protocol, searching for the proper response to this unexpected situation. His radio crackled with distant chatter, a reminder of the official nature of this stop. Last week's testimony was exemplary. "Officer Barrett," Thompson spoke into the awkward silence, his tone professional yet gentler than before. "You showed the same attention to detail then that brought you here tonight." The words carried no accusation, but their weight was unmistakable. Barrett's hand dropped completely from his holster, his posture shifting from tactical readiness to professional embarrassment. The evening air felt suddenly thicker, laden with unspoken implications. A gentle breeze stirred fallen leaves across the parking lot, the soft scraping sound underlining the moment's tension. "I apologize, Your Honor. I was responding to a report of suspicious activity in the area." The words felt inadequate even as he spoke them. Barrett reached for his radio, intending to clear the call, but Thompson raised his hand slightly. "Perhaps this moment deserves more than a simple radio clearance," Thompson said, his eyes meeting Barrett's directly. The judge glanced at his watch. His anniversary dinner would have to wait a few more minutes. "Your commitment to public safety is commendable, officer. However, I believe we have an opportunity here for a different kind of public service." The judge's phone buzzed again in his pocket, but he left it unanswered. Some conversations demanded full attention, and he recognized this as one of those rare moments when circumstance offered the chance for genuine understanding. The police lights cast alternating shadows across Judge Thompson's face as he studied the young officer before him. In Barrett's expression, he saw something familiar, the same earnest dedication he'd noticed during last week's testimony. The judge reached into his pocket, silencing another incoming call from Patricia. "Officer Barrett," Thompson began, his voice carrying the same measured tone he used to mentor young lawyers, "would you join me for coffee tomorrow morning?" The invitation hung in the air between them, unexpected yet purposeful. Barrett blinked, his hand unconsciously moving to straighten his badge. The standard procedure for ending a mistaken stop didn't include coffee invitations from federal judges. "Your Honor, he started, then paused, reading the genuine intention in Thompson's expression. 8 a.m. in my chambers," Thompson continued, reaching for one of his business cards. "Sometimes the most valuable lessons in law enforcement come from conversations we never planned to have." He held out the card, its raised lettering catching the light from the courthouse lamps. Barrett accepted the card, noting the heavy cardstock and embossed federal seal. His training had prepared him for hostile suspects, aggressive resistance, and high-speed pursuits. Nothing in the academy had covered this situation. "I appreciate the invitation, sir, but I shouldn't take up any more of your time." "Time spent building understanding is never wasted, officer." Thompson smiled slightly, thinking of the many young lawyers he guided over the years. "Besides, the coffee in my chambers is significantly better than the break room variety. I had a proper espresso machine installed last year." A small laugh escaped Barrett, breaking the remaining tension. In the distance, another patrol car's siren wailed, a reminder of the world beyond this moment. The judge's phone buzzed again, and this time he glanced at the screen. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Officer Barrett, I have an anniversary dinner to attend. My wife selected the restaurant 6 months ago, and I suspect being detained by law enforcement won't qualify as an acceptable excuse for tardiness." Thompson's eyes twinkled with gentle humor, transforming what could have been a cutting remark into a bridge between them. Barrett nodded, finally holstering his flashlight. 8 a.m., Your Honor. I'll be there." He turned toward his patrol car, then paused. "And thank you." The words carried the weight of genuine gratitude, acknowledging the gift of dignity in this unexpected encounter. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Judge Thompson's chambers, casting warm light across the polished oak conference table. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the air as the espresso machine hummed quietly in the corner. Barrett, 15 minutes early and still in his crisp uniform, sat with perfect posture, his cap placed carefully beside him. "My daughter Sarah picked this blend," Thompson said, placing a cup before Barrett. "She studied in Italy for a year and came back quite the coffee expert." He settled into his leather chair, his robes draped over a nearby stand, looking more approachable in his suit than he had on the bench. Barrett wrapped his hands around the warm cup, gathering his thoughts. "Your Honor, about last night," he began, but Thompson raised a hand gently. "James, may I call you James?" Thompson leaned forward slightly. "Last night was a moment of opportunity. Tell me, what made you decide to become an officer?" The question was asked with genuine interest, the same tone he used when mentoring promising law clerks. Something in the judge's manner invited honesty. Barrett looked down at his coffee, then met Thompson's eyes. "My grandfather was a beat cop in Chicago. He used to tell me that true police work was about protecting people, not just enforcing laws. I wanted to make that kind of difference." Thompson nodded, taking a sip from his own cup. Noble intentions. My father was a high school principal in Memphis. He taught me that respect has to be earned new each day, no matter what title you hold. He paused, letting the words settle. Even with this robe, I'm reminded regularly that assumptions can be dangerous things. A gentle knock interrupted them. Thompson's clerk with the morning docket. The judge held up a finger, asking for a moment. You know, James, last night could have gone very differently. But you showed something important, the capacity to learn, to adjust your perspective when presented with new information. Barrett straightened slightly. I never want to make assumptions, sir. But sometimes training and instinct. He trailed off, searching for the right words. Exactly, Thompson smiled warmly. That's why we're having this conversation. Because good judgment comes from experience, and experience often comes from poor judgment. Now tell me about your grandfather's approach to community policing. 3 weeks after his coffee with Judge Thompson, Officer Barrett sat in his patrol car outside a busy shopping center, observing the morning crowd. His notebook lay open beside him, filled with reflections from recent shifts. The judge's words about earning respect daily had become a personal mantra. A call came through dispatch about a suspected shoplifter. As Barrett approached the store, he noticed a young man matching the description, but something felt different now. Instead of immediately confronting the subject, he remembered Thompson's lesson about assumptions. Good morning, Barrett called out, maintaining a professional yet approachable tone. I'm Officer Barrett. Would you mind showing me your receipt? The young man, initially tense, produced a crumpled receipt and explained he was rushing to catch his bus. Back at the precinct during afternoon briefing, Sergeant Miller praised Barrett's recent incident reports. Notice how Officer Barrett's detailed observations led to 3 successful interventions without escalation, Miller said, holding up the paperwork. This is the kind of policing we need. After the briefing, Rookie Officer Chen approached Barrett's desk. How do you do it? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Your interactions with the public, they're different somehow. Barrett smiled, remembering his own early days. Let me buy you a coffee, he offered. There's this great blend I discovered recently. As they walked to the nearby cafe, he shared Judge Thompson's insights about perception and understanding. That evening, Barrett received an unexpected email. Judge Thompson had recommended him for a community liaison position, a new initiative bridging law enforcement and local leaders. The judge's words stood out on the screen. Officer Barrett exemplifies the thoughtful approach to public service our community needs. Reading the email, Barrett reflected on his grandfather's words about true police work. He opened his notebook and added a new entry. Today marks 1 month since that night in the courthouse parking lot. Every shift since then, I've tried to see through new eyes. It's not just about enforcing laws. It's about understanding the people we serve. His phone buzzed. A text from Chen. That coffee conversation changed my whole perspective on tonight's patrol. Thank you. Barrett smiled, realizing that positive change, like ripples in a pond, spreads far beyond its original source. The Police Academy auditorium buzzed with excitement as families and friends gathered for the graduation ceremony. Judge Marcus Thompson adjusted his tie, reviewing his keynote speech notes one final time. In the front row, now Detective James Barrett sat in his formal uniform, a shining example of the change one conversation could inspire. Leadership isn't about titles, Thompson began, his voice carrying the same authority it held in his courtroom. It's about the choices we make when faced with uncertainty. His eyes met Barrett's, sharing a knowing look that spoke of their shared experience 1 year ago. From his seat, Barrett reflected on the whirlwind year since that fateful evening. His community liaison position had evolved into a department-wide training program, helping officers understand the power of perception and respect. The success stories kept mounting, reduced complaints, increased community trust, and stronger relationships between law enforcement and local residents. Thompson continued his speech, describing a hypothetical scenario about a police stop gone right. Those who knew their story smiled, recognizing the real events that had inspired this teaching moment. In the audience, Officer Chen, now Barrett's partner, nodded in understanding. After the ceremony, Barrett approached Thompson with a surprise, a framed photo of their first coffee meeting captured by Thompson's clerk. Beside it, a handwritten note read, "Sometimes the best lessons come from moments we never expected to teach." "Your Honor," Barrett said, extending his hand. "That parking lot encounter changed more than just my career. It changed how I see our entire profession." His detective's badge caught the light, a symbol of his professional growth. Thompson smiled warmly. "James, you did the hard work. You chose to learn rather than defend, to grow rather than resist." He paused, then added, "Patricia still teases me about being late to our anniversary dinner that night." They shared a laugh, now comfortable enough to find humor in that tense evening. Around them, new graduates mingled with veteran officers, all part of a department slowly transforming through understanding and respect. As they parted ways, Barrett noticed a young recruit watching them with curiosity. "Quite a story behind that handshake," he said to the rookie. "Let me tell you about the night a mistake turned into a mission, and how one conversation can change not just a career, but an entire community."